Mike,
Steve.
while we're writing season 2 of The Last Resort, what we should really do with our times, we could discuss the characters' favourite movies.
Interesting concept, Steve, because I like movies and, well, you like movies and our characters like movies too.
Then it's settled. The Last Resort Movie Club is born. Hello and welcome to the first ever Bad Scripts Last Resort Movie Club. I'm Steve Jones, your host, and joining me on hosting duties, the ever-present Mr. Mike Garlia. Mike, so good to see your wonderful face this evening, joining us for an exciting first for the podcast.
I am really, really excited. I know I say this every single time, but it just seems like a really good concept to go on here. And what better way to offer a movie review with a twist where we actually watch and discuss our characters' favorite movies.
Absolutely, and considering the characters we've got, there's plenty of characters in our story, and for people out there that tune in to hear about those guys, don't worry. We are currently writing season 2, and we will be with you as soon as we can possibly make it. But in the meantime, let's find out today the character. When we mentioned this in the last podcast, the character that we're basing today's podcast on is Dan, and his favorite movie. One of our most popular characters, and his film choice, really interesting one for all the 90s kids out there. Mike, tell us a little bit about the movie we're going to be discussing today.
Okay, before I reveal the title of the film, I'm going to give this small write-up that appears on the front on the old videotape. Now, children, if you don't remember what one of those is, go and speak to your grandparents and I'll explain it to you. Okay, so here is the write-up, and I'm going to try to do my best movie accent here. Twin brothers torn apart by violence on a mission of revenge. One packs a punch, one packs a piece. Together, they deliver double impact. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Twin brothers torn apart when their parents were savagely murdered 25 years ago. They reunite to declare revenge, do some other things, and make a complete and utter mental movie. Double impact.
And first of all, the first person we really need to understand the opinion of is the man whose film choice it is. A character we're going back in time to get the opinion of. Here is our very own Dan the Man to tell you what he likes about Double Impact.
Yeah, alright, our kid, you alright? Well, I tell you what, right? Double Impact. What a movie. Changed my life, right? Because, and I'm telling you why, you got Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? Awesome. Kickboxing superstar, can do the splits, the lot, right? Imagine him twice. Double Van Damme. There is no greater, right? Listen, no, right? You cannot get better than Van Damme. I got a DVD. Sorry, I didn't get a DVD. I can't afford DVDs yet. It's far too expensive. But I got a VHS from a dodgy bloke down the market, right? You can see most of the movie, and I tell you what, the Chinese subtitles, they don't interfere with it whatsoever, right? It is a class movie from start to finish. The story is so well written, right? And the action sequences are incredible. The dress sense of that man, regardless of which character he's playing, is incredible, right? So if you get the chance, make sure you watch Double Impact, because that film changed my life and made me the man I am today. This is Dan the Man, signing out. Peace, y'all.
Well, all right. Thank you for that that review, and You're selling that from Dan, the man from Manchester. So there's a lot to unpick there, and there's certainly a lot to talk about in this film. And if you guys have watched this film, as Steve and I have done this week, you,
Well,
there's some things to address, isn't
yeah,
there?
yeah. We both watched this very recently for this very purpose, and for any of our listeners that have done the same, I'd like to apologise first of all for putting you through that. What can only be
But
described as an extremely enjoyable but absolutely appalling movie. I think.
So let me give you some stats before we go into it, and I
Go
think
on then.
that'll lead us in. So it came out in 1991 for a start.
It
That's when it
did.
was released. It doubled its budget, so it cost around $60 million dollars to make. It made around 30 million overall, and it received a rating of 5.6 out of 10. But this is before Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that. So it was generally well received at the time. Um, all those years ago. And what would that be now? So 1991, 30 years ago, Steve. That film
Yeah,
came out 30 years ago
it
this
did.
year. So
It did.
how old was Dan then when this came out to have such an impact on him?
Well, he must have been. I mean, let's bear in mind that Dan said he watched it on a dodgy VHS that he got down at the market. So this is probably going to be, and back in those days for our younger viewers, you didn't get to see, nothing was streaming, and a DVD, a video, not a DVD, a video could have taken up to a year to 18 months after release at the cinema before it came out on video. They milked those cinema tickets for as long as they possibly could before you would end up getting the VHS copies. And that would be at rental. If you wanted to then buy it, it might be even later because they dragged it out even further. So I reckon he must have been 11 or 12. So quite an impressionable age for a young man, on the mean streets of Salford. I think it probably had a very kind of, I think it had a double impact on him. So I apologise for that straight away. Not
it
only did
certainly
it,
it certainly had something.
I think, I mean, we should probably go through the movie and discuss it sort of in a linear fashion because this was a heck of a film. I mean, let's start off right at the beginning. Then we get a bit of scene setting. The back in the what can only must be described as the 1960s because that would have been the 25 years before the gap. Although it's very difficult to tell because most of the characters then appear 25 years later, looking no older than they did in
Exactly the
1966.
same. Exactly. Yeah, and it's in Hong Kong, and what Hong Kong was kind of still under Britannic rule back then as well. It's still part of the
Yeah.
Commonwealth and still owned by in large part, large part of Great Britain, and it's something to do with a tunnel. So there's a tunnel opening to connect two bits of land together, and it looks like their father and mother are both English diplomats. I want to say, but it's not quite clear.
It's very difficult. They seem to move in diplomatic circles. They have security, but they appear to
Oh, this is Uncle
own the
Frank. Is security Uncle Frank?
Uncle Frank. But we'll get on to Uncle Frank, who's not Uncle Frank, but he is Uncle Frank, and we don't know really who he is in any
Who
sense
is Uncle
whatsoever.
Frank?
What is Uncle Frank? Why is Uncle Frank would be a better question, but we'll get there. But yeah, his parents, right? They supposedly are opening a tunnel now. I don't know whether that's going to be like a toll tunnel. They're going to make money from it, and why it's so lucrative to all these people. Because it's supposed to span from mainland China to Hong Kong. Okay, so there's like a tunnel that's going to mean that trade and everything's
Weirdly,
going to be.
I don't know, and this is probably a relevant point. You never see the tunnel. They're never in the tunnel.
No, you only see the entranceway.
You see,
Perhaps,
yes,
perhaps the 15
yeah.
million didn't span to the inside of a tunnel. Copious amounts of
thi-
they spent it on Van Damme's costume budget. I
costume.
think.
It was definitely exuberant costume budget. So, so a couple of other facts around this as we get deeper into it. So Van Damme produced this film and he co-wrote it as well.
He did.
And I think it is very, very clear. Now, when you're co-writing characters that you want to play and you choose, of all the names you could choose in the world, he chose Chad and Alex. I've never seen a superhero before or an action star before or after called Chad. Unless you're Black Panther, which is the actor. But
Yeah.
it's a very interesting name and a very interesting wardrobe choice to create two characters that, quite frankly, both of them are so unlikable. you're just wondering what the hell they're doing. I don't think even Chad knows what's going on most of the film.
Chad has no idea what's going on in the entire movie. I mean, so his parents get killed, right? Early doors. They tell Uncle Frank, "Don't worry about following us home tonight. Everything's cool. You go your own way. We'll be fine, and we'll get back." And then they get attacked by the triads, and they get shot and killed, point blank range. Horrible stuff.
Brutally killed as well. Like the
Frank
mom.
Frank manages to turn up again just at the at the last minute and saves the babies. One of which the nanny runs off with, and then another one he takes care of. And the nanny, you think, oh well, she's had these babies for at least a year. These babies are at least like a year old, or they look at like they might be getting towards a year old. You think she's going to take it home and bring it up herself? No, she dumps it at the first orphanage she can find. She's like at the door. She leaves it. She's gone. We never see her again. And Frank,
but it's a very specific orphanage as well, isn't it? It's
a French orphanage.
It's a French orphanage.
A French orphanage in British
in Hong
colonial Hong Kong. Okay, and I can understand maybe why Frank may have called Chad, but we are to assume that those names, the British diplomats,
Mum and Dad,
bridge builders, have given them are Chad and Alex. Now, I've never met an English person called Chad in my entire life. I've never met a Scottish, Irish, or Welsh person called Chad. So nobody in Britain and Ireland that I've ever met was called Chad. Especially,
I don't think anyone's been called Chad. Yeah, I don't think anyone's been called Chad in America since 1981.
Yeah, but this would have been 1966, so it's okay.
1966. Well, was there any famous Chads back then? I don't think there was. I mean, look, the
Chad
name's
Michael
the name,
Michaels
right?
from Blazing Glory.
Chad Michael Michaels. Well, Van Damme got there first with the first Chad.
He certainly did.
But Chad is a bit of a dick. I'm just going to say it. I've been wanting to say it. He's opening scenes when he's grown up, including being incredibly Belgium as well. Or it's Brussels?
Belgium.
French?
It's Belgium.
Yes.
Well,
he's
Belgian,
in this.
Let's for people who don't know who Jean-Claude Van Damme is, he's a Belgian. It's the Muscles from Brussels was his nickname. So Belgian, in the very much in the vein of let's get lots of European guys who are ripped to be Hollywood stars in the 80s and 90s. That was a big thing. You know, you got your Schwarzenegger.
Well, of course, you know how he got his career. You know how he got his break. It's quite famous, and I will say it's quite famous. I hope I get this right. I could be making it up, but I definitely read somewhere that he was the original Predator in the Predator suit, and left the sex. He just didn't want to be covered up, and he didn't want not to be seen. And he was in the lobby of a hotel while I think it was a very big movie producer was walking through, and he tried to kickbox him in the head, like a fake kick, and then drop down and do the splits, as we see in the opening of this film with some very tight tights on. And that's how he kind of got on the radar and started out. And I think he got his own vehicle, which was, I think, possibly Kickboxer or something like that, because he'd done a number of films before he actually got here. But Steve, I think you were telling me why this film exists, and I think it makes sense why Jean-Claude Van Damme has co-written this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd perhaps been sick of being typecast as just this high-kicking, doing the splits kind of guy, you know, this action star. And what he really wanted from this script that he'd written was with the two characters, was to show his range, you know, to show that he could play the hard man, but at the same time, the soft, romantic guy who's also a karate, yoga, and kickboxing expert. But
wait, are we saying Chad is the soft and sensitive one?
Allegedly, He looked quite soft in that leotard at the beginning of the of the film, as far as I could tell. Otherwise, it could have been a
Well, you
serious
mean he's
serious issue.
so there's lots of ladies. If you haven't watched the film, there's lots of ladies around him on the floor on kind of a yoga mats, and he's kind of working another lady in a very very small bikini thing. And he impresses them all by saying he has large legs and into karate, so he can do the splits. And camera is panned right onto his ass cheeks, and I mean, right
It's
there in
butter cam, isn't it? It's
full
like,
close up. It really is. You see the ripples, and then he goes down to do a not just do the splits, but also do a weird thrusting thing while he's doing the splits. I wasn't quite, I think it set the precedence of the film, and
Pretty much.
and just before we move on too much, we've seen a lot of hits in films. We've seen a lot of people get killed in films. It's a very common thing to happen.
Yeah.
Would you agree that the henchmen and the baddies carried out what was probably the worst hit in history of film? It was so badly delivered and clumsy.
It was clumsy, but also extremely brutal at the end. When the guy that ends up being scarred by Uncle Frank kills his mum, she's lying on the ground, having been shot in the back, but she's lying there, and he pulls a shotgun and aims it directly at her face as she's screaming, "What about the babies? What about the babies? What will happen to my babies?" And he says, "You'll never find out," and then blows her head off. I mean, that's pretty brutal. If you ask me.
That is brutal. That
And
even for
unnecessary.
exuberant 80s violence, as this. I mean, this film is probably about 5 years too late. This film should have come out in the mid 80s, but it didn't. It came out in 1991 as the more intelligent action movie was coming along. But then, weirdly, we jump 25 years to this studio, to this yoga karate studio,
Yeah.
and that's where we see Uncle Frank again, and he's taking care of Chad. We don't see Alex. We don't know what Alex is, and then Chad and Uncle Frank have a very interesting conversation really really quickly into the film, which is for me a bit of a.
Well, it's obvious that he's been brought up by Frank, so Frank's like a father figure to him, and he calls him Uncle Frank, right? So you kind of go, "Oh, okay, I see what they've done there. He's brought him up almost as his own son," and then suddenly somebody turns up and mentions that there's some video footage of a guy in Hong Kong, and this is, Frank realizes who it is and goes, "That's Alex. That's the twin brother." So, what would you do at this situation when you've had a kid who's now 25, played by 31-year-old Van Damme, is 25 years old. You brought him up as your own all his life. He knows you're his uncle. You're going to break it very delicately to him that's not necessarily the truth, right?
Absolutely, you're going to sit him down and say, Chad, listen, there's some things I haven't told you about. Some things I haven't explained to you about your parents and what happened to them, and the fact, guess what? You have a twin brother, and we've found him, and we're going to go to Hong Kong, and we're going to meet him, and there's going to be a reunion. It's going to be lovely, and you guys can get together. And he may have lost his way a little bit, Chad, but it's okay. His name's Alex, and we're going out there. That's what normal people would do.
Yeah. What did Uncle Frank do?
He said, I think Chad said something about, "You're my uncle," and Uncle Frank immediately, with no emotion whatsoever, said, "I'm not your uncle. Should have told you that, but I just brought you up, but I'm not your uncle." And Van Damme's character doesn't react at all to that. And then he just says, "Oh, and we're going to Hong Kong." If that was you, Steve, I mean, there'd be a few questions, wouldn't there?
There's definite questions around. Wait, what? Can we circle back on that and tell me why you're not my uncle? Who you are? I mean, for all you know, he could have been running some weird paedophile ring that, he's just like, what the hell? Who are you to me? There's so many questions that you would have as Chad at that point, and nothing is being addressed. It's just, oh, we're going to Hong Kong. Oh, okay. So let's skip forward.
It is literally no, but he says these great words. These great words really stuck out at me actually because he said them a couple of times. He said, "Trust me," and he said it a couple of times. And he looks Chad straight in the eye and says, "Look, we're going to Hong Kong. Do you trust me?" And he says, "I trust you." And he went, "Trust me, then." And he just blindly goes and follows him. And then he's a complete. I mean, he's acting like a bit of a.
He's literally just said, "I've been lying to you all your life, but trust me." Come to the other side of the world with me. And I love the way that they actually just slip in there as well, that he brought him up mainly in Paris. I think that's to try and explain the Belgian accent that Van Damme hasn't been able to completely remove. So they go, oh, well,
completely.
If Paris, He does his best
I don't think it's not it's not Coors Light thick. It's not as light as Coors Light, his accent now, but it was a very thick accent back then. And he did, well, I brought you up in. It was just that explanation of like, so the audience knows what's really happened. But there was like being told someone you've known for 25 years, pretty much since you're a baby, I'm not your uncle, mate.
And come with me.
I don't know. And we're going, and trust me. And then the next scene. All right, they're on a plane, and Chad's being he's being annoying. He's being a bit of a dick, and just he's kind of being weird and excited. Boy,
isn't he? He's a little bit of a. In fact, I think that's why Dan likes it so much because he looks at Chad and goes, "You're the man. You're a hit with the ladies. You know a little bit of karate and a little bit of kickboxing, and you."
But he's not quite a hit with the ladies, is he? He doesn't, because he strikes me as someone that's not been a hit with the ladies, but kind of wants to be, but just never gets his moment.
No, I don't think he does. I think he is a hit with the ladies. He's a hit with the middle class married ladies. He's not raw and gritty. He's very much the polished, finished article. I think he's had a lot of success. I think he's not been rebuffed much. In the circles that he's treading in on Rodeo Drive, he has not been rebuffed much. I think
so. When he introduces himself as the Chad, which is the only way you can introduce yourself as the Chad.
So
that's just because
once they get to Hong Kong, then they go for a drink, as you do. As soon as you get to another country, you have to go to a bar. It's It's just the way it is. With, again, no explanation as to why they're there. We're just assuming that they're having a bit of a beer just to find out, the lay of the land and what have you. So they go into the bar and people start to recognise Chad. They start to look at him and...
A guy walks up to Chad and gives him money. And Chad is that stupid. He doesn't think to question it. He's like, hey, I like it here. He gave me some money. And he's like, anyone in their right mind would be like, why have you brought me to this weird bar?
He walks up to him at first with his hand in his coat pocket, looking like he's about to pull a weapon on him, and then gives him money and quickly scurries away. So you're thinking, first of all, this guy's going to either stab or shoot him. Then he gives him money, which kind of makes you go, well, as the audience, we know what this means because we know about the twin. But the Uncle Frank is being a dick here because he could have explained. He still doesn't know. Chad still doesn't know he has a brother, right? He's in the bar where his brother has been spotted, and is being Chad-like. He's being the Chad, and could get himself into a lot of trouble. And Uncle Frank's just sat back laughing and enjoying it. That's what's going on.
Oh, it gets even worse. Uncle Frank. So a blonde woman appears and walks up to Chad and they do a bit of flirting. Uncle Frank, who's like, "Yeah, you go for it, mate. You absolutely on you go." Uncle Frank, you are right. Uncle Frank is not a good guy.
So so Chad goes upstairs with a woman he's met 30 seconds ago, flirting with, who appears to know him and say she likes his new hair and his fancy clothes.
And his silky boxer shorts.
Well, we'll get to that. Goes upstairs with him in this bar. I'm assuming that she's living above this bar or whatever is happening. And proceeds to just stick a hand in his underwear and go, "Ooh, silk boxer shorts. This is nice."
Normal behaviour.
Yeah,
Normal behaviour.
That's what happens every bar I go into. People always check out my silk underwear. But then all of a
sudden... Mine are Homer Simpson boxers.
We don't talk about those because the tears mean that you can't wear them to bars. It's not allowed. So so then he turns around and is faced by his mirror image. His twin brother is there. But we know it's not him because his hair's slicked down with gel that looks like it's been bought from a thrift shop. You know, the really crispy stuff that you can get
It
for like in
really
the UK. You get it for like 59p from the Happy Shopper store, and you put it on, and after about 5 minutes, it was rock hard, and you could have opened a beer bottle with it. You know,
It's definitely
um,
wet look. It's definitely
yeah,
wet look.
and he punches him out. It's like poof, and when he wakes up, Frank stood over him. Sort of like, oh, by the way, this is your twin brother.
So
Oh,
Frank
and by the way, I could have told you, but I thought I'd let you get punched out instead.
how long is a flight from wherever they are in America, LA or whatever, to Hong Kong? How long is that flight?
Well, whichever direction you go, whether you go Pacific or across Europe, it's a long ass flight, I'm sure.
It's a long way. You've got at least 10 hours, right, with journey time and stuff like that. So Uncle Frank has a day, a whole day to break this news to Chad that we're going to Hong Kong. Chad has a whole day to ask, why are we going to Hong Kong? And there's something about business mentioned. He said, you got business out there. We need to go out there, right?
Yeah.
Chad is genuinely stupid. He is genuinely stupid. And you can tell he's stupid because and I know we're jumping ahead, but I have to say it right now, he goes on a fishing trawler wearing a 3-piece suit in a double pleated shirt and tie for no reason whatsoever. That's how stupid Chad is.
Well, I mean, the boys get introduced to each other, right? And they have very different temperaments, which is what we kind of expect. And again, like we were saying, there seems to be no reason other than revenge to try and take on their parents' killers. So we won't.
But here's one thing I don't understand though. So Alex has always been in Hong Kong and has a reputation,
Yeah.
and he's a bit of a scampy. You know, he makes reference throughout the film that he had nobody. He didn't have a Uncle Frank lying to him and just being Uncle Frankie. But he's come up and it's not a lot is really explained about what his line of business is, about what he really does, what he's trying to achieve.
Well, I think
And
we see because he does when the early doors when they try and find out what's going on, they have 2 cars that he's smuggling with goodies in the boot in the trunk of the cars,
yes,
and that ends up blowing. And it's kind of insinuated that he's a smuggler, and that's how he makes his money. He's a bit of a bad lad, and he does a few underhand things, but he's not hurting people. He's doing that kind of.
he's
They
not.
kind of make that very
But
clear.
he does travel in the same circles with the very same people that killed his parents and the very same bad guys. But no connection is ever made until Chad enters the scene, and suddenly everyone is obsessed with these 2 brothers.
But I think that's the point, isn't it? Because Alex doesn't know who his parents were, so he has no idea that they killed them. He just knows that they are, one of them being a triad boss and the other one being a supposed legitimate business owner who was the one that actually ordered the hit on his parents. So then it's like, I think Frank's trying to get them the business back from the business owner, but it kind of is never properly explained. It's always kind of insinuated that that's what they're going to do. Because whether this tunnel has been bringing in a lot of money. But even the bad guy, the triad boss, tries to recruit Alex, but in doing so, it accidentally pulls in Chad, thinking that he's Alex. And a hilarity ensues with terrible fight scenes between the triad henchman and Chad, including him getting him punched in the testicles, with which I found great solidarity, and thrown in a shipping container for some unknown
Well,
reason.
do you know, this is where you get that. This is where bad guys have to establish themselves, and there was varying levels of bad guys throughout the movie. The scarred bad guy, the Chinese guy, He's that bad. He's that badass. He kills one of his own henchmen because Chad kicks it into him, so he just snaps his neck.
Yeah,
His own guy.
yeah.
That's how evil that guy is. And no one. It doesn't seem to bother anyone that that's just happened.
I'll be like,
It's just.
I'm just going to hand in my notice now because, these working practices are not really what I was looking for. I mean, the pension's great, but if there's a threat of my neck being snapped because I got punched by a weird guy from Belgium, then, I'm out, mate. I'm out.
I'm just. You'd think the other henchmen around him would see that and go, Jesus, this guy's a bit insane. He's a bit
I'm
crazy. But Chad, if you're Chad's there still, right? And they're
Yep.
all around him. He must be thinking to himself at that point, I'm not getting out of here alive. He just killed his own guy
Yeah.
for being a bad fighter.
So what do they do? They throw him in a trunk and then dump him in the street. They don't kill him. They just go, oh, we've beaten you up a bit, so fuck off and get off you go. Off you go.
We sent a message, but we don't know to who.
Yeah,
because
because he's the guy that they're trying to talk to. They think he is living still. So what message are they sending other than, oh, look, that's like walking up to somebody and going, hey, you know how crazy I am, and then breaking your own finger? So that if I'm that crazy and I would do that to myself, imagine what I'll do to you instead of breaking their finger in the first place. So, there's method in the madness, but it is complete madness.
Well, I mean, this is the same guy that used the shotgun on his mum at point blank range. So
Not his own mother.
We know
not
his own mum. Yeah, Chad and Alex's mum. So we know he's already a little bit crazy. And then you've got that other henchman that looks a lot like Tommy Wiseau, with the really long hair, and he's kind of there. And then you've got the female baddie that suddenly appears halfway through.
Yeah, she's like a bodybuilder, isn't she? But she is nowhere to be seen for half the movie, and then suddenly she is like in the middle and the thick of the action, just constantly, and
introduced in the creepiest of ways.
Well, we see her in the background at the restaurant when they go into the restaurant to try and basically kill the bad guys. Right? They drop off. They said, here's some cognac for him. I want to come and work for him. Here's my peace offering. And both Chad and Alex dress up the same to do that. Which is a random. It's like, okay, everyone's mistaken you before for the same person. Why do you feel the need to even try even harder now? But they don't seem to really have a plan that they've discussed because neither of them know what the other one is doing. Frank's walking around even though they all know, even though the bad guys know what Frank looks like because they've seen him 25 years ago, and he just turns up again and goes, oh, by the way, I'm here. I'm fine at the party chatting to all these ladies. Don't worry about me. And then they try and blow him up. But then the woman, the muscular woman, is just there at the table and then suddenly becomes an integral part of the plot. And then
very deep into the plot. Yeah.
And there's someone, the blonde lady, let's not forget that, turned out to be Alex's girlfriend, right? Living serious girlfriend, right? And she's confused because she thought that Chad was Alex, which is understandable as it is the same person. And then she works for the bad guy, right? So when she's in the office, she's trying to get information, trying to get some files out. And back in those days, they were literal paper files, not with a USB stick or something. It was literally go and get the papers, see what she could find out. And the muscular woman comes in to the office where she is and is suspicious. But instead of saying, turn out your pockets, she becomes the creepiest person. And she gets her to spread her legs and I'm going to frisk you now. And
she's complete horrible. It's the creepiest sexual harassment ever.
It genuinely is one of those things that you expect to see on a video when you start working at a new organization and they go, this is our sexual harassment video. This is what you definitely don't do. And that's everything she seemed to do. And she was like, now you can frisk me.
She was very grabby. I mean, even towards the end of towards the end of it, which we'll come on to, she's trying to grab stuff. She just
Grabby Grabberson. definitely.
She is definitely grabby. Now this is the turning point, right, where the film becomes absolutely batshit crazy. This is the bit where suddenly the story doesn't matter anymore, and it's set piece after set piece where it is
Okay.
absolutely freaking mental.
Well, let's just go to this bit. Okay, so they decide to set up base on an island, I think, in an abandoned hotel. Now, Uncle Frank at the beginning appears to be running a successful gym and or series of gyms in Rodeo Drive. So not a cheap place to have a business. Um, could they not have afforded a motel in Hong Kong or a hotel? They had an abandoned hotel that they were living in all of a sudden.
No, I think they needed somewhere to hide out, and they definitely needed a place where Alex could kick the shit out of it.
Yeah, but they also needed somewhere to hang up raw chickens while they cook noodles because Chad proceeds to cook noodles, right? Plain noodles that he salts. And while he's salting them, bearing in mind this is an abandoned hotel with nobody there and holes in the ceiling and everything, there is all these, but they might not be chickens, they might be quails because they're really small, plucked birds hanging above the
Hanging.
noodles, but they were raw. And I'm like, there could be anything dripping into your noodles there.
It was like set decoration. It was
Yeah.
just like put there by the set designer.
They were
Went,
like,
we're
how
missing.
do
Do you know what? We're missing something here. There's a lot. It's a lot of wood. We need some
It's
chicken.
definitely not Chinesey enough. Let's hang up some dead raw birds. That will.
We need
that will
some. We
definitely-
need some poultry in here. We need some raw chickens just hung around Van Damme. He'll pop.
Yeah,
He'll pop on
and it
screen.
will feel Chinesey, right? Then proceed to never touch the noodles. Nobody eats the noodles. At no point are the noodles ever referenced again. But he spends that time making the noodles, right, and doing it. Maybe it's just to show his versatility.
He gets the phone call. He gets the phone call from the blonde woman.
Yeah.
Is it Daniela or something? I think her name is.
Yeah.
He get and honestly, this is after she's just been frisked, right? So she knows they're watching her, and she knows the suspicion there.
Yep.
And so she calls him from the office, whilst telling him everything, and at the same time saying, "This phone line could be bugged. They could be hearing me, but I'm just telling you everything anyway." And neither one of them thinks to stop. And it's just like, I will come to you. And then it cuts to the boardroom, and they're all just sitting around the table listening in, like having a cup of tea, just listening to this conversation.
Ooh, have you heard what they were saying? Ooh. Absolutely batshit crazy, as you say. And and there's various sort of set piece fight scenes that happen from then on to the end of the movie, and we still don't know what the motivation of Alex and Chad really is, because they're not getting along. They don't think a lot of each other. The only thing that Chad goes on a bit of a chase, doesn't he? And the part you mentioned about the trawler, the Chinese fishing trawler thing, that they end up in the stereotypical scene you always see in Hong Kong harbour with all the fishing boats, and they're running and jumping across the fishing boats to escape the henchmen. And then it was incredible because Chad was brought up in Paris, right, and in LA, in what seemed like quite privileged conditions. He was always very well groomed, and he wears the finest of 1991's clothing and fashions. And suddenly he jumps off a trawler into the ocean, sopping wet, climbs up onto another trawler, and knows exactly how to start said trawler and steer it. We cut back. His hair has been styled. His clothes are completely dry. Yet the woman he was with is half naked because she can't dry herself out.
Wait, it's even worse than that. So her hair is dry when she gets out. Her hair's all kind of long and wavery and dry.
Yeah.
And then, so they're sailing along at full pelt, and the music's going, and it's all really dangerous. There's the jump cuts everywhere.
Yeah.
There's the chopper on top of them. It's chasing them down. And at that moment, she decides to go below deck and take a top off and come back up with just a blanket draped around herself. If I was Chad, I'd be asking a question of what are you doing? We're in a chase
What,
right now.
what are your priorities here? What's going on? Are you having some sort of? Is there some sort of chafing issue happening that that moisture has meant that you've got a salt
I
patch?
genuinely believe there was alternative motives with her as a character, because she says a few things to wind Alex up. One
Yeah,
is obviously she, if we let's just pull all of this in together. Alex catches her with a hand down his trousers, admittedly an identity mistake.
yeah.
She then gives him a kiss, and that was a deep kiss. That was a kiss.
Mm,
That was a not you. You could be my brother-in-law, but I
yeah.
just want to feel if it's different. And then she's on the phone to Alex, and he's like, "I love you," and she's like, "Yes, tell your brother I said hello." Like openly winding him up
Yeah.
about, and he doesn't like his brother anyway. And then they're on this boat, right? And she's whipped her top off, and
Oh yeah.
she's just
She's
got a blanket draped around herself. And we have to talk about what Alex does. We
well.
have to cover this.
I thought at first. I thought, oh, because Alex starts to get flashes of Chad
No,
and
flashes
Danielle.
start happening.
Yeah,
Flashes
this is
start
what I'm
happening,
saying.
but
This
we're
is what
not
I'm saying. Let
sure
me get.
who's.
Yeah. Let me start to
Yeah,
get. Let me get to this. So we see him drinking. We see Alex drinking, and then Chad, and then he starts. Then there's flashes, right, of Chad and Danielle kissing passionately, making love all over the place. You can't see it's like a dream
it
sequence.
is
And at first you
beautifully
think, oh,
lit.
is this real? Then you're like, oh my god, is Alex having that phenomena? Where you have a twin brother or you have a twin, and you start to experience things vicariously through them. And he's thinking he's seeing what's happening between his partner and his twin brother. And he goes mental and starts smashing up the hotel, roundhousing through Chinese walls where
He's
they're only made of very light
slow, slow,
timber.
slow, slow motion roundhousing
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. I mean, there is more kicking in this movie than a lot of movies about kicking. It is genuinely just, I think they
But
were
the
paying
weird
by the
thing is,
punch.
Steve, he is literally fantasizing about his own twin brother copping off with his girlfriend. It's his own fantasy and he gets himself wound up to the point where he starts kicking the crap out of the hotel.
Well,
Like,
this is the point, though. If he thinks that that's happening, you could almost understand it if it was, but he genuinely is just imagining it happening. It's not like he's got some sort of sixth sense. He's just imagining it. And Chad's on the boat, you flash back to it, and he's just like, steer the boat, off to Belgium, here we go. And
no,
there's
but
nothing's happening.
no, he's also trying to outrun a chopper
Yep.
on a fishing trawler. And do you know what? Where is Uncle Frank? Uncle Frank disappears whenever this stuff happens. He's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
when Alex is kicking the crap out of the hotel, he's drinking Johnny Walker. He's breaking glasses everywhere. There's no chicken in sight. And then Chad and Danielle finally get to him. Then weird, and this must be I don't know what was going on here. He then starts attacking Chad
Yeah.
because he's so full of rage and jealousy. He knocks out Danielle. He
Oh no,
literally roundhouse kicks her.
well, no, he open hand slaps her in the face, doesn't he? He proper gives her a slap, and it's like, wow, okay, that's relationship over now. You've gone angry at your brother and said you're having an affair with my girlfriend or you're taking advantage of my girl, and then he openly slaps her across the face, knocking her to the ground. But that's okay, because later on in the movie, it's all like, oh, that doesn't matter. You were just angry. It's okay.
It was absolutely fine because he was drunk. He was drinking,
Oh,
right? That's what Uncle
if he'd
Frank
been
says.
drinking, then that's always an excuse to strike a woman. Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Absolutely not. I don't know whether that was some. I think. Yeah, Chad then tries to defend her honor, and they have a bit of a kick fight where they just throw kicks around, but in a way that they're so evenly matched that no one's going to win this, And they both go their separate ways and seemingly fall asleep on the beach.
Yeah, they both nod off somewhere, don't they? It's like they both sort of go, "I'm so angry."
No, but if you remember though, Uncle Frank goes to Chad, and he said to him, "You can't escape from the island." And he said, "I shall swim the South China Sea," and he believes it. He
Mm.
believes he can swim. That's how, because like I said, Chad is not bright. He is not connected to the world in
No.
a way that normal people are.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And
And
then,
then they
of course, sorry, go on.
and then Uncle Frank gets kidnapped. At which point, Chad should be happy because Frank has been the cause of all of his problems throughout his entire life. He left his parents to die, and when he should have followed them home, even despite the fact that they said he shouldn't. He took one of them, didn't even search for the second one, and took the other one around the world, and has constantly put Chad in danger, and left him completely unprepared for what was coming. So, if anything,
Let's not
Chad should
forget
be
as well.
celebrating.
So I get Alex. Alex is growing up in Hong Kong. You know, he's a gangster. Chad, 48 hours before all of this happened, was a yoga instructor who is now killing people with his bare hands and not giving two shits about it.
Oh, and is an expert in all sorts of automatic weaponry. I mean, he was loading stuff, and you were like, "How do you know how this weapon works? What part of being a yoga instructor in your unitard prepares you to to sort out all of this weaponry?" I don't understand how that happens, but anyway,
I
we
just love some
digress.
of the devices. No. We should cover off some of the violence, right? Because when Alex, if you notice, every time Alex is fighting people, he's usually got a cigar in his mouth as a way
Yes,
to
or
differentiate him and look
well,
badass.
even when he doesn't have a cigar in his mouth, I noticed this in the restaurant scene. He had a toothpick in his mouth instead. He was
It's a
like,
character trope.
Alex has always got something in his mouth.
It's a character thing, and Chad wears really bad clothes. But there's another couple of things. I don't know if you noticed this, and it was more with Alex than it was with Chad. Alex has got two handguns, right? And each handgun, now I'm not a gun expert, right? But in each handgun, you could probably fit maximum 8 to 12 bullets. So you got 24 bullets in your hand, right? He never reloads and runs through that marketplace, and he must fire over 100 shots without reloading, right? And this is what it was like in the 90s. I know it's a running joke that they never reload the weapons, but he fires so many shots. He puts about 7 in one guy for no reason whatsoever. I mean, one shot would do it. That would take him down. That would be enough. But oh no, he has to do one better constantly. And you know, the other bit is they put C4 everywhere. They put plastic explosives all over the walls and stuff, and then blow it up remotely. But there's no initiator switch. There's no There's no way that stuff could. I thought,
no
oh, they must shoot
transmitter.
it. They're going to
There's
shoot it.
nothing.
There's nothing. It's just a bit of plasticine stuck in a wall. And then the other thing, when he's fighting through that marketplace, right? If you notice, written all over everything was no smoking signs, like spray painted on everything. It's like, and every single character is smoking.
Every one of them's got a cigarette on.
Everyone, every single one. But I mean, the how many slow motion roundhouse kicks did you count? That's his trademark. So there was so many in there, wasn't there?
Genuinely, and how many crotch grabs can you have in one movie without thinking maybe I should just wear some sort of protective cup next time I go out fighting, because every time
Everyone's
someone seems to
grabbing
be
them.
banging me in the nards. And as somebody who, you know, our listeners will appreciate, I has suffered injury at this in this area, I can assure you, you are not then thinking about doing more roundhouses subsequent to that kind of a knock. So I would suggest some sort of protective clothing.
Well, I have a slight theory on this one. I do have a very, very slight, and it's a bit of an out there theory. It's a bit of a fan theory. I don't think Chad has a pair of nads. And the reason why, not because of the tight sequence at the beginning. When the Chinese bad guy takes him out, he kind of punches him. He tries to roundhouse him, and he grabs his leg and he punches him full whack, straight in the holy of hole. You know, the jewels, testicles. Thank you. Couldn't remember the name of them. And Chad doesn't react. And then the next scene, he's get thrown out the back of the truck, and he just walks away like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So I genuinely don't think there's anything there.
Any man that is listening to this would be standing, and there is a stance where you stand bent double with your hands on your knees, breathing very heavily.
You're going to be
For a
feeling
good 5 minutes,
sick.
and yeah, your stomach, you can feel it in your stomach, and that is not one where you just walk it off. You don't just walk it off. That's a good 5 minutes. I'm just going to have a moment, please. Just give me a moment. So that definitely felt like there was some injustice there in terms of
There-
that injury.
and there were a couple of final things for me to say on this one, because I know time's going, but there was one character. I felt really sorry for one guy.
Who's that?
There was this. He's a henchman. He might just be trying to earn a living and stuff like that. He just signs up to a job. He's playing cards, right? And Chad literally walks up behind him and breaks his back for no reason whatsoever and just leaves him dead on the floor. All the guy was doing, he's playing solitaire by himself. He's minding his own business. He's not bothering. He doesn't even have no weapon there. But
No.
this is how bad Chad has got. Chad is not caring that he's probably killed about 60 people.
But this is the point. Who's his role model all his life? Uncle, I don't give a shit.
Uncle Frank.
So
Uncle
who
Frank.
cares? He does what he wants, and that's it. So it doesn't really matter, does it? So that's part of it. So let's get to the climax of the movie now. So
Before we get to the climax, we've got to cover one last element, Stephen. That is the fashion. We have got to cover the fashion quickly.
I mean, it was 1991, right? So we were on the tail end of the 1990s. We had a fashion explosion. And we're now getting to the point where the pleated trousers, pleated shirts, bomber jackets, high-waisted was super in fashion. Right? Chad has the nice sort of comb-over flop that just covers the...
I do have a confession to make about Chad's hairstyle.
Mike, I think you mentioned this to me before, and I think this is one that is definitely worth sharing with our listeners.
I do have to share it.
You watched this movie, and what inspiration did it give you, Mike?
Well, I was about 13 or 14, and I took the video box to my local barber and showed him the character that he plays, Chad, and asked him to make my hair like that, including to give me a tight perm to make it curly. And he did a reasonably good job at that haircut.
At perming your hair and then brushing
at perming my hair. And I imagine, Steve, that Dan did exactly the same as me. Because who wouldn't be so inspired by Chad to get his hair done like that? And I'm not showing the pictures. So I think you're right. There was some major fashion disasters in there as well. How many mullets did you count?
There was a lot of mullets, but let's remember it was 1991, so this wasn't a fashion disaster at the time. We look back subsequently and go, "Oh my God, what were they thinking?" At the time, he was supposed to be high flying. Look at me. It was the middle of this was sort of the tail end of the yuppie years. This is when guys could be as flash and flamboyant as they wanted to be, and more's the better, So that I think that was the thing, because Alex always wore the black long leather coat and the black t-shirt, and he always had the, like you say, the cigar in his mouth. So that was the juxtaposition, the difference between the two of those, so that we always had that way of distinguishing them, as they had very different styles.
Did you notice though that Danielle? I don't know if I wonder if I'm making a connection here, and you'd have to watch this again and look at pictures. Danielle's costumes in the latter half of the film, and I'm talking the beige and the white shirt and everything, she is dressed exactly the same as Elsa in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Well, so I would have to go back and check that one.
Exactly the same. But anyway, look, 24 mullets I counted, which included background artists and characters. And my last observation is the body doubles they used for Jean-Claude Van Damme look nothing like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Had a completely different shaped head. So whatever angle you got them at, it was like suddenly, oh, there's Jean-Claude. Oh, it's definitely not him. Oh no, it is. Oh no, it's definitely not him. And it was one of those where it just really pulled you out of the movie really quickly, because he wasn't even close to being similar looking kind of guy. So back to the story anyway. So let's get through to the thing. So it's the final assault. They've got Danny and they've got Alec and Uncle Frank have been kidnapped. So it's up to Alex and Chad, who are basically fallen out at this point, are going to have to come together to stop what's the evil tyrants that own a tunnel from.
They also announced their dastardly plot and their names over the whole tannoy system on the big ship they're on.
Yeah, so let's just monologue like we're in a 60s Bond movie and tell you exactly what our plan is. And then we get another great cliche group of fight scenes. And another crescendo. So the muscular woman is back and she gets into a fight and then she makes sexual advances towards Chad. Is it Chad or Alex?
Alex? No, it's Alex. She
Okay.
fights Alex.
Oh, right,
Chad
actually,
fights the Tommy Wiseau guy, the guy with the really long hair, the proper 80s guy. He fights.
yeah, that's right. And so yeah, it's a 90s, 80s, 90s action movie, so the good guys beat them. And then the old Chinese and the old British guy that are the main villains, they're the real difficult ones to take out. So they have to split up because they have the wise idea of running in different directions. So Chad and Alex can't get them together. So one goes after one and another goes after the other. And I think at one point, Chad is being chased by the old British guy, and or he's chasing the old British guy, and then he's looking around in the dockyards and he's in with all the shipping containers, and suddenly we see a shipping container start to move on the crane towards him, and he's with Danielle at this point. He's freed her, and they're going towards the edge of the water. He manages to push her in a crevice so that she doesn't get squashed by this shipping container, which has room underneath it to go under and get away from. You notice as it's moving towards him, and he instead jumps in the water behind him, and so it stops.
What is an 8 or 9 foot drop as well? We know that Chad's not the brightest. He can't think that fast, I'm afraid.
No. So the guy jumps out of the cab and comes and walks underneath the shipping container to see and looks for Chad, and he's shooting into the water going, "You've got to come up for air soon." And then the weirdest appearance anybody's ever made in a movie I've ever seen. We look at the cockpit of the crane, and have you ever, when you were a kid, do you ever play with a car seat where you would like recline really quickly and then pull yourself back up really quickly? Chad proceeds to do the bit where you sort of don't put your full weight on the car seat and it flips you forward and appear in the seat of the crane. To which point the British guy goes, "Oh no!" and he drops the shipping container on him to squash him flat. But again, with absolutely no feeling in Chad's face whatsoever. He's not torn by the fact he's dropping and killing yet another person. As bad as this guy may be, he squishes him into a puddle and has not even blinked an eyelid.
Nothing.
Not once.
He is not registering what's going on around him. He does not have a clue. It's by pure chance and luck that he's actually made it that far, right? And then, Alex does his big fight scene and then
reunited. They come back
and
together.
Then they reunite. And he hands Daniel back to her with a bit of a wink and a nod to go to him.
Yeah.
Go.
Here's your girl. Have her back.
But Chad saved the girl 3 times in that movie.
Yep.
Chad's been there every single time. It just didn't feel like a real relationship between Alex and Danielle. And
let's not forget, the last time they saw each other, he smacked her full on across the face. Yeah, and she just runs up and cuddles him and kisses him, and everything is all right with the world.
It's his hair. It's slicked back. It's crusty. It's his crusty, crispy hair. But again, I mean, and Alex has just killed a woman at this point. He has... all right, she's a baddie, so it kind of makes it okay. But he's just killed a woman.
Yeah, but they just says, "Oh, it's fine." But then there's probably the last 3 minutes of the film. Then there are literally no words. It's just they're hugging. Frank gives everybody a wink, and Chad gives a big thumbs up, and the movie ends. And that's it. Did they get the tunnel business back? Did did they get some money? Because I'm not sure about you, but I think legally, just killing some mobsters and a bloke do not return to you the rightful ownership of a business. There is a legal matter that you'd have to sort of address in that situation. But well, let's not worry about it. Let's just end the movie with a
I
thumb up.
don't know. I do not know what they were doing or what they were going at there. I don't know. It just ends, and the brothers are kind of like, "Hey, you're all right. You are. Hey, you're all right too." And the girls in the middle thinking, "Oh, look, I get buy one get one free." Uncle Frank is just there.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's trying to get out of it. I honestly, apart from it being revenge. And they're avenging their parents' death
Yeah.
by killing literally half of Hong Kong.
But whose revenge was it? Because they didn't even know their parents existed, right? They didn't even know who they were or that this situation could. So all of this is Frank's revenge. This is Frank's revenge for not being there when he should have been there to protect the people he was employed to do. But instead of doing it himself, knowing full well who these people were, he waits until until the babies are 25 years old and gets them to do his dirty work.
It just, I don't get it. I just don't. And do you know what? The worst thing is, right?
What?
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching it.
It is the worst film that I've ever enjoyed. It's a weird thing to say, but it's
It's just
genuinely
crazy.
mental on so many levels, but a great film. So we must say a massive thank you all the way back to 1999. Thank you to Dan the Man for his movie selection that we enjoyed, revered, and were absolutely mesmerized by. And I think we have to give it a rating now. So, Mike, I want to get your rating out of 5 for Jean-Claude Van Damme's Double Impact.
Oh, right. Do you know, it's not the worst I've ever seen. I think that I could see what he was trying to do and where he's trying to showcase his talents, right? That's really,
Yeah.
story came second.
Yeah.
It was his vehicle. It was all about him. I did weirdly enjoy it, but I cannot summarize the film because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
And because of that,
But
I'm going to give it a 2.5.
a 2.5. I'm of a similar mindset. I think it was cinema fodder. It was it was all about the roundhouse as it appealed to a specific audience. The story definitely took a second place to Van Damme being in every scene, and if he wasn't making out with somebody or talking about his penis, he had to be doing a high kick or the splits. So I'm going to give it 3 roundhouses out of 5.
3 out of 5. Well, there you go. Our first ever review. Now, what we're going to do as well is we're going to close off
Yeah.
each one of these, and we'd love to, we'd love to hear your
Let's hear
views and
what
thoughts.
other people think. So if
if you think we've got it wrong, share a comment. Yeah.
if you've watched this movie or if you're going to watch it subsequently, I mean, we've pretty much ruined it for you. But if you want to contact us via any of the normal social media accounts, you can get us at ScriptsBad on Twitter or at Bad Scripts on Instagram. Be sure to let us know what you thought and if you had any difference of opinion on what we've come up with, and then we can start to talk about next week and our next movie.
So, Steve, two questions: which character and what movie? Let's tell our audience they've got a bit of time to give it a watch before we record our next episode.
So, I'm going to start with the movie first. Now, do you remember Saturday Night Fever?
Oh, the John Travolta classic.
Absolute classic, iconic movie. We're not doing that.
Oh,
What
we're
we're
not?
doing... No. We can go on better than that. What we decided to do... Well, not what we, but what a certain character has decided to do is pick its lesser-known Sylvester Stallone directed sequel, Staying Alive.
Staying Alive.
Yeah. John Travolta reprises his role as Tony in the sequel to Saturday Night Fever, Staying Alive. And the character, Mike, you're going to announce the character whose favourite movie was Staying Alive. and who will be commenting on this next week's episode. Mike, tell us which character it is.
Well, my favourite movie is Staying Alive. So join me next week, Kelly, where I'll talk you through why I like that film.
So, we hope you've enjoyed the show. We hope you enjoy the movie. And we'll see you next week on Bad Scripts Presents The Last Resort Movie Club. Take care.
Double in the impact. Bye-bye.
Bad Scripts was written and performed by Mike Garlia and Steve Jones, a Beach Tide production.